Hello, I'm Blake Johnson. It's 4 o'clock in Melbourne and these are our top stories. A new COVID record, more than 1,400 cases, grave fears for our hospitals. Plus a major boost in the vaccine race, Pfizer doses now just 3 weeks apart. Frustration as positive cases and businesses with outbreaks are left in the dark. Woolworths at risk of closing more stores due to staff shortages caused by isolation requirements. And the triumphant Demons on their way home with some extra special cargo.
Live from Melbourne, this is 7's Afternoon News with Blake Johnson.
First at 4, there is a record 1,438 new COVID cases today and 5 deaths. Illegal grand final parties are being blamed for up to 500 of those new infections. Shana Alvella, it's a 51% increase on yesterday.
Blake, the surge in cases today is firmly being blamed on illegal gatherings from Grand Final Day. Of our cases today, at least 500 of them are being linked to these backyard parties. COVID Commander Jerome Weimar says the majority of these cases are men aged in their 20s, 30s and 40s. The alarming detail in these numbers is that these cases are all in new households in new parts of Melbourne. We are now seeing more cases in the east and southeast, in the start of what could be a new worrying trend.
Well, COVID's just slapped us all in the face again. It'll have very grave implications for our nurses, for our ambulance workers, for our hospitals and for people who need care.
Many of these cases were completely avoidable. Now, of course, they will add further pressure to our health system.
If the cases continue to stay at this level in the coming days, there is a chance our roadmap could be paused. But for now, the plan is to keep pushing on with vaccination and hope the numbers come back down. Blake.
Shana Alvella in the newsroom. There is a major change to the vaccine rollout with Pfizer doses to be given just 3 weeks apart. As Jade Vincent explains, it's hoped the move will help us reach the 80% vaccine target quicker.
The state government hopes by reducing the Pfizer interval from 6 weeks down to 3 weeks, Victoria will reach that 70% double dose target earlier than October 26. Changes in the booking system will be made from October 4, allowing people to bring forward their second dose. But the Premier warned supply is still limited.
It's not just about what you get, it's when you get it. We are in a race. I know a lot of people don't like to use that term, but we are in a race. Because the vaccination numbers that's when we get to end the lockdown.
But there is plenty of the Moderna vaccine to go around from this weekend. 88,000 doses to be distributed to state-run hubs, with the focus on a vaccination blitz across the southeast, where daily cases are rising. 129 reported across the area today. With the new supply, hubs at Sandown Racecourse, Dandenong Plaza, St Francis Xavier College in Officer and Frankston will offer walk-ins, no appointment needed.
Moderna is a vaccine very similar to Pfizer, as beneficial, and we would encourage people to come on down and get vaccinated.
There is urgency with this latest supply of Moderna. It has already been defrosted. While health officials say there needs to be more familiarity around Moderna, they are confident there won't be any wastage. They're encouraging this younger cohort of 20 to 40-year-olds who are expressing a preference for Pfizer to come forward and take up the Moderna vaccine that's readily available.
The owners of a small business at the centre of an outbreak have criticised the way they've been treated by the health department, saying no one has returned their calls for help. The surge in cases is putting extra pressure on contact tracers who have had to change tactics.
There's a lot of frustration from the community as they await details from DHHS to work out what their next move should be. This bakery in Caulfield North had a worker test positive on Tuesday, yet they still haven't heard whether they are a Tier 1 or Tier 2 site and are having to contact customers themselves.
We're informing, our customers via Instagram, answering the phone, emails, all that sort of thing. Feels like we're doing all the heavy work, the crisis management, yet we've got a government that's constantly lecturing us about, doing the wrong thing. We're trying to do the right thing. We want to be open safely. At this stage, we'll be closed for the next 2 weeks.
And it's not just businesses growing increasingly frustrated. This young Croydon family are also caught up in the waiting game.
Have you had contact from the Department of Health?
I've been chasing them
and I've struggled to get contact with anyone from the relevant sort of department.
Both Adam, Emily and little Isla tested positive to COVID and have been isolating in their home for 21 days. They should have received their official clearance to leave earlier this week.
We were told that after 14 days you'll be clear to return sort of back in the community, but you'll need to await some documentation from the Department of Health and Human Services before you're able to do that. We're still waiting to get documentation. So yeah, we can't enter back in the community, and we've been stuck here, which has been quite frustrating. And I understand they're under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress, but it's not really fair that we're prisoners in our own home.
Now this comes on a record-breaking day of cases, and that's only going to put more stress on the DHHS team.
Woolworths stores are facing increased pressure with staff being forced into isolation. Christy Cooper is at the Coburg Station supermarket, which had to close yesterday. And Christy, we're being warned more stores may have to shut their doors.
Yeah, we are, Blake. There is enormous pressure on our supermarkets at the moment with so many staff members in isolation. At Woolworths alone, there is currently more than 1,000 staff members isolating. Some of them are sick with COVID, but many of them are close contacts. This store in Coburg had to close temporarily yesterday, but Woolworths says 5 more stores are at risk of closing over the weekend due to staff shortages. The company has called on the government to make what they call sensible changes to contact tracing, concerned that as our case numbers continue to climb, this sort of problem will only get worse. There are currently 24 Woolies stores listed on the Victorian Government website as Tier 1 exposure sites. Blake?
Christy Cooper there in Coburg. For more on Victoria's COVID numbers, we're joined by Professor Nancy Baxter, head of the Melbourne School of Population and Global Health. Thanks for joining us, Professor. Cases increased by 51% today. Just how much of a shock was that? 1,438 to you.
It was extremely confronting. I was starting to get hopeful that, we would continue to keep things under some kind of control so that, when we reach that 70 and 80% vaccinated number, that we would be able to come out of lockdown. But if numbers continue to increase like that, I'm sure everyone can imagine that we'll be in very poor shape when we reach those vaccination targets, and our hospitals will be under a lot of stress. One day doesn't make a trend, so I think we'll have to see what happens. But it's a very confronting number.
You say one day doesn't make a trend. With that in mind, though, do you think the peak is still ahead of us?
Yes, the peak is still ahead. I was kind of hoping that we were going to start to see the peak maybe in a week or two. It's not what was predicted in the model. The Burnett model predicted the peak would be, in mid to late October. But I was hoping maybe we'd beat the peak, maybe we'd beat the model and get a lower peak earlier. But with this dramatic increase, I don't think that there's any way we can expect that. I think we're definitely nowhere near the peak at this point.
When we get to that 70 and 80% double dose rates, we're going to see some restrictions ease. Do you think we can still safely do that?
So I think it all depends, and it all depends on what we do. So, this can either be a blip, a bad blip that happens for a few days, and we get it back under control. We get the trend under control so that the outbreak stops growing as quickly, so it goes back to the pace it was, say a couple of days ago. So we can either work collectively to do that, or we don't. We let it continue to get out of control, and if that happens, then the cases will be very high by the time we're at that 80%. I don't think it takes an epidemiologist to know that if you're at 1,000 cases when we open up versus 10,000 cases when we think we're going to open up, you're in a totally different situation. And if we're at that 10,000 cases per day when we try and open up, we're just not going to be able to. So, it's in our power to drive these numbers down, to beat the models, and to get things under control now so that we have the opportunity to have all those freedoms when we're at 80%. It's not far off, but it's going to be further off unless we act now.
Well, let's hope it is just a blip today. Nancy, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Queensland faces new restrictions after the state recorded 6 new cases today. There are now limits on household gatherings, at weddings and at hospitality venues across hotspots in the southeast and up in Townsville. It also means the stadium for Sunday's NRL Grand Final will be limited to 75% capacity.
Everyone realises that we've got to put these restrictions in place if we are to avoid a lockdown at this stage.
In New South Wales, there have been 941 cases and 6 deaths. Anyone aged over 60 is now able to access Pfizer and Moderna jabs there. To breaking news now, and the Demons have arrived home. The Premiership side just touched down at Melbourne Airport. These are pictures not long into our newsroom of the players getting off the plane. They have been in Perth for a couple of weeks, including Perth's the drought-breaking win on Saturday, celebrating before re-entering lockdown here in Melbourne. We'll cross live to Nick McCallum, who's at Tullamarine a little later in this hour. Coming up, an accused killer to be freed because his dad is battling COVID in hospital. Plus, a woman stabbed to death in Melbourne's southeast. And a major win in Britney Spears' legal fight for freedom. We're back soon here on 7 and 7+. A soggy afternoon for Melbourne, currently 15 degrees outside. Severe thunderstorms are affecting parts of Victoria. Jane Bunn's here with the details later in this hour. A woman has been stabbed to death in Melbourne's southeast. Emergency crews were called to a home on Kelvinside Road in Noble Park around 2 a.m. The victim was taken to hospital where she later died.
I saw this morning a tent and some people talking. I saw one policewoman and I saw tape around the houses. This is the first time I've ever seen police there.
A man known to the victim is helping police with their inquiries. An accused killer has been released from jail because his father is in hospital battling COVID-19. But as Cassie Zervos reports, Adam Tibber has strict bail conditions.
Adam Tibber is accused of fatally shooting Adrian Piccioni in what police have described as a case of mistaken identity. But today, the Supreme Court granted him bail because his father has COVID-19. The 22-year-old allegedly pulled the trigger when a number of rounds were fired into a Laylaw home in July last year. The bullets smashed the front window and continued through the house, one fatally striking Piccioni, the rest going straight through a fence and into the neighbour's yard. Police say he was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
A young man was killed as a result of this evil act. We know that Adrian was absolutely nothing to do with this situation.
Since Tibber has been in custody, his parents both contracted COVID-19. His father now gravely ill.
The doctors were saying he's really one of the sickest patients they've got in the country and in New Zealand. With these restrictions, we actually can't visit, and that's probably the hardest part. That the only thing we can do are video calls, and he's not even conscious to be able to talk back with us.
In the decision to grant bail, the court must hear exceptional circumstances. In this particular case, Justice Lex Lasry said the pandemic has created havoc within the criminal justice system and prisoners have been faced with extremely difficult conditions. Many have lost contact with family and friends. As part of Tibber's bail conditions, he must not leave his home unless it's with his mother or uncle, who has also provided the court a $350,000 surety.
There's been a major legal win for Britney Spears. Her father, Jamie, has been suspended as conservator, leaving her one step closer to freedom. David Woywood was in court in Los Angeles.
It's not quite freedom for Britney Spears, but today's ruling that the man who controlled every aspect of his daughter's life for the past 13 years has now gone, has been welcomed as a major step forward for the Free Britney movement. Supporters exploding with joy as news broke Jamie Spears had been suspended from his position as co-conservator.
This is absolutely monumental. This is the first step in Britney Spears finally attaining her freedom. Come on. I mean, come on. This is insane.
The man that fought in court for Jamie's imminent departure, Britney's lawyer Matthew Rosengart, sharing his victory with fans.
Britney Spears has been faced with a decade-long nightmare, a Kafkaesque nightmare, orchestrated by her father and others.
It's an argument the court agreed with, the judge ruling the current situation is untenable. It reflects a toxic environment which requires the suspension of Jamie Spears. The judge dismissing Jamie Spears' attempt to terminate the conservatorship. His suspension means he'll be required to hand over key documents to his successor, potentially shedding light on allegations he'd misused millions in his daughter's money. The pop star posting this hours later, a video of her learning to fly.
That's just crazy. Wow, thank you.
Britney Spears back behind the controls of her life as the court looks set to rule on her freedom next month.
Coming up, more from Melbourne Airport, where the Demons have just touched down. Captain Max Gawn in charge of special cargo as the premiership party rolls on. Plus, how a quick-thinking Army veteran trapped a rogue alligator. You're watching 7 News live from Melbourne. Andrew McCormack is here with Sport. Macca, the triumphant D's have returned home.
Yeah, they sure have, Blake. It should be a hero's welcome for Max Gawn and the D's, but the first Melbourne premiership side in 57 years was greeted by COVID compliance officers at Melbourne Airport a short time ago. The captain, though, happy to be back home after a history-making grand final win.
I've been excited to get back. As much as Perth's been great and the support that we've been given in Perth's been great, I've been dying to get back to Melbourne, and although I probably can't see anybody, I can make my way home, see family, and yeah, hopefully in some due course I'll be able to show the cup around to some people that really want to see it.
The D's are hoping to celebrate with their fans once Melbourne is out of lockdown, hopefully in December later this year, say the D's. Still on footy, and the Bulldogs insist Vice-Captain Mitch Wallace is a required player for 2022. The Dogs are also confident Tim English will sign a new deal to stay at the kennel, despite ongoing interest from clubs in WA. Last night, Marcus Bontempelli claimed his fourth best and fairest as Luke Beveridge put a positive spin on their season with some help from 90s rock icons Pearl Jam.
To reflect on Man of the Hour from Pearl Jam, Tidal Waves Don't Beg Forgiveness, Crash Then On Their Way. Well, as we're looking through the rounds, we've seen great evidence of that, to be able to beat the better teams on the road, to be able to make it through to a grand final.
To cricket, and it's been a sloppy start to Australia's first women's test match against India in 15 years. Annabelle Sutherland was one of 4 test debutants as Meg Lanning won the toss and elected to bowl, but the Aussies missed several chances in the opening session.
And dropped. Oh, a huge opportunity there. And it's Annabelle Sutherland, who's such a brilliant fielder, and she has put that down.
A short time ago, India was 1 for 93 after 25 overs. Meanwhile, Glenn Maxwell smashed his second straight half-century in the IPL last night.
Scrunched downtown, 50 for Glenn Maxwell.
I've felt good from the moment I've come here. It's been nice. I got into a nice little routine at training, outside of training as well. It feels just like it's really clicking for me at the moment.
Maxwell finished unbeaten on 50 from 30 deliveries as the Royal Challengers Bangalore claimed a 7-wicket win. Superstar mare Very Elegant may be the headline act for Saturday's $1 million Turnbull Stakes, but trainer Kieran Maher believes he can spoil the party with reigning Cox Plate winner Sir Dragonet.
The better the quality of the field, usually that generates more tempo. It looks like there's going to be a nice bit of tempo in that race, so that's what he needs, and I think he's pretty spot on.
Oh, it's a fascinating race. All the action from Flemington this Saturday, live and free, of course, right here on 7. And when your weekly salary is around $1 million a week, the pressure is on to deliver. Cristiano Ronaldo did just that for Manchester United.
From Ronaldo, Lingard's there, Ronaldo's there! Manchester United win it, and Cristiano Ronaldo in the last minute of stoppage time.
Ronaldo's winner secured a 2-1 Champions League victory over Villarreal. Elsewhere, Chelsea suffered a 1-0 loss to Juventus. Blake, that is all for sport. We'll cross back to the airport shortly to hear more from Max Gawn. I'm told he was in good form coming off the plane, was Why Maxi. Not? So we'll hear more from Max Gawn coming up a little later on.
All right, Macca, thanks for that. A Florida man has a unique tactic to catch a rogue alligator that wandered onto his property. The quick-thinking Army veteran uses his rubbish bin and its lid to keep the alligator contained. It did put up quite a fight, but was free to go a short time later when the man wheeled it to a nearby pond and set it free. There's been a significant setback in Victoria's COVID fight. Up next, what's being blamed for today's record, 1,438 new cases. Plus, experts reveal if Victoria has reached the peak of the outbreak. Frustration from the small business left in the dark to deal with a growing cluster. And new details on extra support for traders as we reopen. We're back in just a couple of minutes.
Live from Melbourne, this is 7's Afternoon News with Blake Johnson.
Victoria's COVID cases have soared to a record 1,438 new infections and 5 deaths. Social gatherings over the long weekend are being blamed for the surge in new cases.
This is more than a 50% increase on yesterday's daily numbers, and I'm sure that'll be a great concern to all Victorians. We've been very clear these numbers would go up. They go up faster, of course, if people don't follow the rules. They go up faster if people are out visiting each other in their homes.
The surge, this event, the 50% increase in his numbers is down to a significant number of social gatherings over Friday and Saturday of last weekend. So we've seen over the last few weeks, of course, ongoing transmission within households, ongoing transmission between households, usually between close relations. What is different about the numbers today is that the activity 5 or 6 days ago, Friday, Saturday last week in particular, was quite different. The contact tracers tell us that there have been significant numbers of social gatherings on Friday and Saturday over a long weekend. Grand final parties, other social gatherings, barbecues, backyard visits. And all of this has generated significant additional caseload. So around a third of our cases today, we think are due directly to those different types of social gatherings, as people have dropped their guard and decide that it's a grand final weekend, it's a long weekend, we deserve a bit of a payback, we deserve a nicer time. And that has now translated into at least 500 additional cases from what we would have expected to see. But today is a significant setback in how we've managed this outbreak. It's a significant setback on our Burnett roadmap.
Professor Mark Stuve from the Burnett Institute joins us now. Mark, 1,438, not a great number. Was this on the radar at all?
Look, it's a significant blip. It is a significant increase on yesterday's numbers. It was not necessarily on the radar as a single day, but when we look at the modelling that we provided to the Victorian Government on the 9th and released on the 19th of September in relation to the roadmap, our case projections are based on a 7-day rolling average. So adding this to the mix, our modelling is actually, accurate as to what the 7-day average is over the past week or so. So we'll have to just see in terms of the week to come. My concern is, I guess, the extent to which the cases that were transmitted over the weekend, which were clearly significant, whether that translates to onward cases earlier this week as people are infectious in the community. We'll really have to see how the numbers roll out over the next week or so.
The modelling released by the Burnett earlier this month predicted the peak to be in October with between 1,400 and 2,900 cases a day. Do you think we've hit that ahead of time?
It's too early to tell. We really don't like to, have our models or our projections influenced by a single day. As I said, we largely base them over a 7-day average. So it'll really be the next week or so as we observe the extent to which those cases have seed onward cases as to whether those projections may be accurate and whether the peak may come a little bit earlier.
If we have a similar number today and tomorrow and the next day, does that start to really affect what happens at the 70 and 80% double dose mark, those two benchmarks that we're holding on to for dear life?
Yep. Look, it certainly affects the risk to the community and the health system when those thresholds are reached. What we need to do is make sure that we're at the lowest daily case number possible when we lift restrictions at 70 and 80%. Where we start at that point will have a significant impact on the burden of the health system going forward. So in the same way that people's behaviours over the weekend affected case numbers this week, the Victorian community has an opportunity over the next few weeks to impact the numbers over the forward period and impact where we are at those 70 and 80% marks, and that will dictate largely the extent of freedoms that we enjoy over the months.
We'd love a crystal ball, but I guess it's a waiting game from here. Mark, thanks for your time this afternoon.
No problem. Thank you.
A small business owner in Melbourne South East says he's desperate for help from the health department after 6 workers tested positive to the virus this week. Mike Russell from Baker Blur joins us now. Mike, your business is now at the centre of a growing outbreak. What have you heard from the health department?
Absolutely nothing. We haven't heard anything. We've got a customer-facing retail business with production in the back. As soon as we found out about a positive case, we isolated everyone and sent them to go and get tested. we've done all the paperwork. We've been on the phone to DHHS. This is something that we're doing all the heavy lifting on, and we're being left in the dark by, DHHS. It's really such a shame that, we're doing all the work, we're doing all the testing, and we're doing all the communication, but it's all that is getting lost in a Bermuda Triangle known as the DHHS.
Mike, how are your staff going?
Look, they're all doing the right thing. They're all isolating. They're a little bit stressed, but we're communicating with them, on an hourly, daily basis. They're worried. Our customers, we've assured them that all of our front of house tested negative, thank God. So it's isolated to the production. But they're all doing the right thing. They're all staying home. They've been tested. We're asking them to get retested so we have more information, have a picture about what's going on. We're doing all the heavy lifting. And the 6 workers who have tested COVID positive? They're fine. Like their symptoms are very mild. All of them have had their first vaccine. That was something that we were doing internally with all of the staff because, we're a food business and we have a retail element as well. So we were doing all the right things, as per the government advice. But now that, we're looking for help and assistance on classification and reopening process, we have no correspondence from them. I understand you were actually giving your workers vouchers to go and get vaccinated. Absolutely. Like, we're a food business and we need to keep our customers safe and our employees safe. So we started an incentive to get all double vaccinated staff members a $250 tax-free voucher. And they had, by the end of November as a deadline, in accordance with what, the government, both federally and state, were asking for, because it's important to try and keep our employees safe and customers safe alike as well. Mike, what's your message to the government after the experience you've had? Look, the community is doing all the hard work. We're the ones that are seeking information. And even if it was just an email or call or someone touching base with a business that has 2 stores, 50 employees, it's pretty significant that we've had absolute silence from them. All right, Mike, all the best. Hopefully you hear from them soon. Thanks for your time this afternoon. Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye. The state and federal governments have announced funding for struggling Victorian businesses. More than 9,000 hospitality venues will be eligible for payments of up to $20,000 a week until the end of October.
And that'll mean that Victorian businesses have certainty over the next 6 weeks, through the 70% barrier, through to 80%.
The package also includes one-off payments of $20,000 under the COVID Hardship Fund. Coming up, we're live to the airport as the triumphant Melbourne Demons arrive home. Up next, what Captain Max Gawn had to say following the drought-breaking victory. And how a good Samaritan and a simple smartphone app helped save a man's life. We're back soon from our Dockland studios right here on 7. The triumphant Melbourne Demons have arrived home with some special cargo. Nick McCallum is at the airport for us this afternoon. And Nick, the celebrations are far from done. Apparently they played the club song through the terminal.
Well, they did, Blake, but it was the most bizarre Premiership Cup return you can ever imagine. Yes, when they arrived, they played the theme song, It's a Grand Old Flag, but no fans were there. They were greeted by about 25 health department officials who had to check their permits. Max Gawn walked through the terminal with the Premiership Cup, but the rest of the players were fairly subdued, fairly tired after 4 days of celebration. Now, all of them will go on holidays for about 6 weeks before returning to training, and it is hoped that there will be a big family day at the MCG before Christmas where that beautiful cup will be introduced to the thousands of Demon fans that have been waiting for it for 57 years. Now, of course, they've had relative freedoms in Perth. They're now back in Melbourne where there are a lot of restrictions, but Max Gawn told us a short time ago he's just delighted to be back.
Perth had been super for us, and the thousands of supporters that, not sure if they're real Melbourne supporters or they're Melbourne for the week, but they gave us a lot of support, and it was a really good day on Sunday when we went down to the mall and were able to show the cup off to the supporters that were there. But our team name is the name of this city. This is the city we're from, and I'm excited to be back, even though I can't see anybody. I feel like everyone knows now the cup's home. And then obviously when we're allowed to, we'll do something.
And of course, Max Gawn has got some exciting personal time coming up as well. He's expecting a child, and he even joked as he left, maybe that child is already there. And he also joked at this stage, the number one chance for the name is Petrarca, named after the Norm Smith medalist. And Blake, I reckon that is a great idea. Petrarca Gawn, two beautiful names.
Of course you would. Nick McCallum at the airport, a proud Demons man. Thank you. A Melbourne man who suffered a cardiac arrest has been reunited with the Good Samaritan who saved his life. As Jodie Lee explains, it's all thanks to a simple smartphone app.
Good Sam is an app that anyone can register for to help save the life of a fellow Victorian. You don't need to have first aid qualifications, just be willing and able to render CPR if someone near you suffers cardiac arrest. Chloe Worth is registered for the app and got the call to attend to Paul Laister just a few streets away in Croydon North.
Paul was my first call, and when the alert came up, I was a bit shocked to see it, but I said yes straight away and quickly acted.
Paul had suffered a heart attack. His wife Beth rang 000 for an ambulance, which then activated an alert on the Good Sam app.
It eased the panic. The people were there that knew what they were doing.
Chloe arrived within minutes and took over CPR from Beth until paramedics arrived.
And I always just wondered, how did Paul go? Was he okay? And to hear that he's not just okay, he's doing great, and that he's home with his family, absolutely delighted to hear that.
Ambulance Victoria is now hoping to recruit 500 new volunteers like Chloe. Demand for the Good Sam app is expected to soar as wait times for ambulances here in Victoria blow out. Our health system is working at its slowest ever rate as a result of pressure caused by COVID-19.
Up next, a concerning trend in Victoria's latest crime report, plus why we're being warned to expect even more postage delays. And a 7-week-old lamb bringing lockdown joy to Melbournians. Stay with us here on 7 across Victoria.
Know the headlines as they break. Know the stories as they happen. With 7news.com.au, know the news now.
Victoria's crime rate has dropped by almost 7% over the past 12 months, but there is a concerning trend in relation to family violence. It increased by 5.9%, and breaches of family violence orders increased by more than 15%.
The following 4 increases are the main increases that we've had. The public health and safety offences, obviously with CHO directions, that's increased by 26,446. Then you've got forgery and counterfeiting, which is up by 31%.
Reports of thefts, robberies and burglaries all dropped by more than 20% each. Shock details have emerged about the murder of a UK woman at the hands of a serving police officer in March. Wayne Cousins showed his badge and used handcuffs to detain Sarah Everard, pretending to arrest her for breaching COVID guidelines. He then raped and killed the 33-year-old.
Police officers do not view Wayne Cousins as a police officer. They view him as a murderer who happened to be a police officer.
He faces life behind bars. The federal government is pulling the pin on business support payments once a state reaches key vaccination milestones. After that point, it'll be up to the states to help businesses through. Political reporter Taylor Aiken has more from Canberra on just how this will work.
Good afternoon. Treasurer Josh Frydenberg has confirmed that he will turn off the government's support tap for businesses once a state reaches 80% double dose vaccination. These support grants, which are funded jointly by Commonwealth and state governments, will taper off in line with easing restrictions at 70% vaccination before being fully withdrawn at 80%. But with New South Wales and the ACT expected to reach that 80% milestone weeks earlier than Victoria, the federal government have stumped up with an additional $2.2 billion to see Victorian businesses through to 80%. Meanwhile, there is some good news for the budget bottom line. Treasurer Josh Frydenberg announcing Australia's budget deficit was $80 billion less than forecast at the end of the last financial year.
What is driving its improvement to the budget bottom line is more people in work and less people on welfare. Since May of last year, more than 1 million new jobs have been created, and the unemployment rate has fallen below 5% for the first time in a decade.
It is worth noting, though, that this data was finalised before the Delta outbreak, with ongoing lockdowns punching a COVID-sized hole in figures from the current financial year. Still, the Treasurer and the government remain confident that the economy will still bounce back once vaccination rates rise and restrictions are eased.
Around 2,500 FedEx staff have begun a 24-hour strike in a protest against claims of delivery outsourcing. It's expected some package deliveries around the country will be delayed even further after Star Trek employees took similar action a week ago.
They've really been some of the heroes of the pandemic. These workers want security for themselves and their families into the future.
FedEx has agreed to reduce outside contracting where possible. Now to a heartwarming story of how a 7-week-old lamb is bringing cheer to South Yarra residents in lockdown. Sonia Marinelli caught up with young Zeus and his carer, Amber.
Well, you're not mistaken. I am holding a little lamb here in the heart of South Yarra. Meet Zeus. He's a 7-week-old orphan, and his surrogate mum, Amber Schultz, has been taking care of him at her home. And it's safe to say they've been turning heads on their daily walks.
Do you want to say hi? Look at the lamb. We spotted the lamb a mile off. We were like, is it? It is a lamb, yeah. This is like the highlight of her day, definitely, yeah.
Zeus is so popular with the locals here, he's become a celebrity in his own right.
A lot of people actually know him by name now, you know, they'll see him across the road and they'll be like, oh my God, there's Zeus.
Zeus was born on Amber's family farm on the Mornington Peninsula. After his mother died, it was only natural that she would step in to care for him. She's studying to become a vet and has been caring for Zeus around the clock until he's ready to join the rest of the lambs back on the farm. And of course, he's been getting a lot of attention from locals here, putting a little spring in the step of many who've stopped to say hello.
I thought it was a dog, but then I walked over and then I saw it was a lamb.
I thought it was pretty cool that there was like a lamb in the city.
But he won't be a little lamb in the city for too much longer. He's got a few weeks before he'll be weaned off his daily bottle feeds, and when he's big enough to be able to look after himself, he'll be back to greener pastures on the family farm.
Let's take a quick look at Melbourne's roads.
Good afternoon, I'm Jess Miller, checking the roads thanks to Sal Salmon. Obviously slippery conditions out there, so a reminder to drive with extra care. Wouldn't do any harm to pop your headlights on if you're heading out. We have flooding causing delays on the Monash Freeway citybound just near St Kev's with the left-hand lane closed off and speeds down to 60, and similar situation just near Punt Road. Switch your dinner for a protein-packed hot smoked to Sal Salmon grain salad, cooked and ready to eat for a delicious boost of omega-3. To Sal, it's Tasmanian for salmon.
It's not a problem many of us would have, but cleaners have been busy at Windsor Castle dusting chandeliers in the semi-state rooms. They were once George V's private apartments, now accessible to anyone with a ticket for the castle. The autumn cleaning comes as the castle prepares to welcome visitors from tomorrow. Let's get an update on the weather with Jane Barn. Jane, how's it looking out there?
Well, Blake, we have areas of rain and heavy thunderstorms in Victoria, and some of that has come into Melbourne too. The city reached 18 on a muggy but generally dry morning. Now it is down to 15 and wet out there. A steady rain has engulfed the Melbourne area. It is coming in from the east. Not our usual direction, but that's why it's so humid. It is air down from Queensland. The rain has set in for the afternoon and evening, and there's the risk of heavy thunderstorms in amongst all of that. That rain has swept across Gippsland, stretching into parts of the north and west. It is moving around a low that is over Western Victoria now, with thunderstorms developing this afternoon. Now, those thunderstorms are a risk anywhere in Victoria once again, but they are heaviest for now in the yellow area in the northwest of the state. Now, the storms are much more widespread, as you can see up in New South Wales, and more severe. There has been a tornado this afternoon near Bathurst. In Victoria, these areas remain on flood watch. With more rain to come, rivers are rising. This image from southern Gippsland this afternoon. Already 3 rivers have gone into minor flooding, with more expected today and tomorrow. This is a far-reaching weather system. Moist air is feeding a pair of lows That's why it feels muggy. It's come down from the tropics. The lows are slow moving thanks to this high that is down to our south. We'll have another round of potentially heavy thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon. That's in Victoria. Then on Saturday, that zone shifts to eastern parts of the state. By Saturday night, it is all over. Around the nation tomorrow, that storm threat continues for Brisbane, Sydney and Canberra and all areas in between. Up there, the storms may bring destructive winds and giant hail, as well as torrential rain. Hobart has rain like Gippsland saw today. It's a clearing trend in Adelaide. The next big weather system hits Perth. In Victoria, widespread showers tending to areas of persistent rain. Thunderstorms are likely to fire up again in the afternoon, bringing heavy falls. They're least likely at the Gippsland coast. So in Melbourne, the rain continues tonight. It'll clear out tomorrow morning. Then the afternoon brings the risk of showers and heavy thunderstorms, a top of 20. So the best time to head out tomorrow is the morning, Blake.
All right, Jane, thank you very much for that. That is all from the 7 Newsroom for now. Peter Mitchell's here at 6. From the 7 News team, have a great afternoon.